Chapter 7. Dave crossed the border on a small back road that saw little traffic. He planned to take back roads all the way, feeling that the road less traveled would be safer for him. He did get pulled over in a small, picturesque Massachusetts town by a local cop who didn't look too happy in his newly issued black BDU Homeland Security uniform. "What's the problem, officer?" asked Dave, his hands on the steering wheel. "We're just checking all out-of-state plates and cars coming from up north," replied the man, who looked to be about 2 years past retirement age. Dave nodded. Up north meant New Hampshire, a whole 20 miles or so away. "Well, sir, I'm just coming back from a hike in the White Mountains. Here, let me get my license and registration." Dave leaned over towards the glove box. "Don't bother, son. You seem harmless enough. Watch your speed and go home and stay there. It's going to storm soon." "Thank you, officer." Dave rolled up the window and drove off. Seeing as the sky was clear, Dave assumed the officer meant the storm brewing was political and not atmospheric. Perhaps he'd be heading up north soon himself. Dave crossed into Connecticut. He was forced to turn onto a main road by a detour sign. He turned onto the road. He hit his brakes. The traffic in front of him was backed up with no indication as to why. As traffic moved forward, he saw police lights. It looked like a checkpoint. Damn, he was trapped. If he tried to make a break across the shoulder, he'd be spotted. He couldn't turn as there were Jersey barriers dividing the lanes. Depending on how difficult it was, he'd have to try to bluff his way through. As Dave approached the head of the line, he saw a number of cars pulled off to the left with security troops going through them. Some people were in handcuffs on the side of the road, watched by submachine gun wielding thugs. Dave was waved up by a black uniformed troop wearing a reflective vest. Dave rolled down his window. "What's up, officer?" "License, registration, proof of insurance," said the man for the umpteenth-thousandth time that day. "Sure, here you go." Dave handed the man his papers. "Where are you coming from?" demanded the security troop. "I was hiking up north. I'm going home." "If you were up north, you must have friends up there, huh?" asked the guard, suddenly very friendly. "No," answered Dave. "It was just a solo hike." "Pull over to the left, please," said the officer. It was an order, not a question. He handed Dave his papers and waved the next car forward, looking for a way out. Armed police were everywhere. He felt trapped. He was trapped. He pulled up to a signaling troop. "Turn the car off and leave the keys in. Please step out." Dave did so. He looked at the troop. "Kenny?" he asked. Kenny was Sandy's cousin, who they only saw on the 4th of July when Sandy's family threw a big party. The cop looked up and looked at him hard. "Oh, Dave, how are you?" He quickly looked down at the documents in his hand. "This all looks in order. Where are you going?" "Home," said Dave. "Where you been?" Officer Kent asked. "Took a few days to hike up north," he answered. We're supposed to search anyone who's not between their work and home." "What have you got in back?" he asked, reaching into Dave's car and pulling the keys out. "Just my backpack," answered Dave. Just then, 2 more troopers came over. "Anything, Ken?" asked one. "Nope, nothing here." "You checked the gas yet?" "No, I'll check it in a minute." The other troop opened Dave's door and released the gap cap cover. "I'll get it." "It's all right, I can get it." "Trying to steal all the collars yourself, huh?" laughed the other troop. "Allow me," he said to Dave. He took a long plastic tube and snaked it into the gas tank, pulling out some of the gasoline. He let the gas out into a clear glass quart container. Taking the bottle from a pouch in his belt, he used the dropper to squeeze a few drops of fluid into the gas. The drops hit the gas and immediately swirled blue and purple. "Uh-oh, we've got bootleg gas here, Ken," said the other man. Looking at Dave, he said, "Where'd you get this? You hoarding, huh?" He got close to Dave. "You a bootlegger? We got a cell for you." "No," said Dave. "I bought in Nashua at a gas station." "Well, let's see a receipt." Dave managed to find a homemade receipt on the passenger side floor of the car after a brief search. "Well," said the troop, "it's still obviously bootleg, probably from Canada. You can go, but we're confiscating your car." Your what? Asked Dave incredulously. You heard me. Talk back again and I'll lock you up for interfering with a peace officer in the line of duty. Kenny butted in. That's enough, Tony. He's mine. I'll handle the paperwork. Okay, said Tony, giving Dave a hard look. But don't take any shit off Nature Boy there, and call me if he gives you any lip. Leering at Dave, the thug turned and strutted off. Look, Dave, I'm sorry. If I had found that I'd have let you go. Heck, I have bootleg gas in my car right now. But with Big Nose Tony, I'm going to have to write this up. Can I take my pack? Asked Dave. Sure. Look, let me write this up and I'll give you a ride. I actually got off duty about a half hour ago. I can drop you. Well, where do you live anyway? He looked at the license. How about I drop you near your in-laws? Can they get you home? Sure, that'd be great, said Dave. And thanks for the help. Oh, I'm glad to help, Dave. This war is tough on all of us. I wish people would just cooperate. Things would be so much better. Dave waited while Ken finished the paperwork. He gave Dave a receipt for the car that indicated the driver was free to go. He told Dave to take his pack and start walking. He'd pick him up about a half mile down the road. Don't want to try to explain giving you a ride, he said. As they rode in silence, Dave and back, Ken drove, listening to the police radio through his earpiece. Hope you don't mind, Dave, but I've got to keep up with current events, he said, laughing. A few minutes later, Ken answered a call. This is Romeo 45, he said. Dave saw him turn and look at Dave. Okay, sure. No, I understand. I will. I'll be there in 20, Captain. Ken turned to look at Dave. I don't know what you're up to, Dave, but your in-laws are in huge trouble, and I've got to go into the station and give a detailed report on what I know. I'm dropping you off here, as he pulled up to the curb. You go home and stay there. We may wish to speak to you. Dave thanked him for the ride, but had barely started to speak when Ken disappeared in a cloud of dust. Dave was still 10 or 11 miles from his in-laws. He set out on foot, his pack of familiar weight. As he walked along the road, an old pickup pulled up. An old man wearing coveralls and a feed store cap rolled down his window. Where are you headed, fella? He asked. Merrow, answered Dave, naming the town next to his in-laws. I'm going right by there. Hop in back and I'll give you a lift. Thanks, that'd be great, said Dave, dropping his pack over the bed and climbing over the tailgate. Dave had the man drop him off near the town forest. He took the path through the forest and came out 3 miles from his in-laws. As he headed across side streets and the odd unbuilt lot, he heard the sound of sirens in the distance. As he got closer, he realized that it was coming from quite close to his in-laws' house. When he got to their street, he saw it was their house. It had burned to the foundation. Police and fire units were up and down the street, the firefighters still pumping water over the smoldering embers and beams. Dave quickly walked into an open garage and dropped his pack. He then walked up to the crowd that had gathered behind the yellow police tape. What happened? He asked a man standing with open mouth. Police raid this morning. Man inside shot 2 cops, then barricaded the house. Shot at the cops all morning, then set the house on fire and killed himself and the 2 people inside. Dave looked at the man. Who killed them? The man looked at Dave and shook his head. Well, they found the bodies of the old couple, but they think the guy who did it escaped. Dave repeated himself. Who was that? They say it was their son-in-law.